talking in their language and putting it to the problem it's solving first. Like if you come out and say, well, this isn't, we all do it. Like I was just talking about all the great things ChatGPT can do. It's like, no, what's the problem that you need solved? That's where to start, and then finding ways to solve that. A lot of times it's not a sophisticated tool. Half the time it's like, do you really need to be even doing this thing that you're doing, or can we just not? Like, do you have to have this approved every time? If you approve it every time, right? Do you need that step? Yeah, it's an educational journey.
Welcome to the Forward Slash, where we lean into the future of IT. I am your host, Aaron Chesney, with my beautiful co-host, James Carman. And today we have with us Matt Coatney. Today's guest is a seasoned technology executive, entrepreneur, and advisor of over 25 years of experience in AI, technology, and business. He's held leadership roles across a range of industries, including life sciences, energy, law, finance, and logistics, and has been instrumental in the launch of more than a dozen commercial products. Matt's career has spanned everything from founding and advising startups to working hands-on with companies at all stages. He's helped build sustainable business models, secure funding, and launch innovative products, all while guiding teams on how to solve real-world problems using technology. So, Matt, tell us something we don't know about you.
Something you don't know. I am an avid skier that discovered it later in life. The first time I was skiing was 25. I was about 50 pounds overweight, and it took me about an hour and a half to get down a bunny slope. So I've come a long way since then.
I always find that the use of skis can actually negatively impact the rate of descent. So, if falling and rolling down the hill seems to be something.
Yes. You would think all you have to do is slide down the hill. It's just
right,
that.
Yeah. It's that stopping at the bottom that can be troublesome.
Yes. Oh, I've had that issue before.
Yeah.
There's a couple times that tow rope became a clothesline.
Well, I appreciate you both having me here. I'm looking forward to it.
Oh, this will be a blast. We're gonna have fun. One thing that I think that's kind of an oddity at least for me, right? I mean, I've known you for a little while, Matt. You work for a law firm. It's kind of an odd duck when you think of like IT, but maybe fill us in a little bit there. Like, what are we missing? Why would we not think of a law firm when we think IT?
Yes, well. And to be fair, I thought the same thing when I first stepped into the legal industry. I'll start by how I got into it. So I love complex solutions, complexity. I had early work in machine learning and like drug discovery and some really sort of gnarly problems. And so I was drawn to those kind of fields. And interestingly, legal text, like the case law and statutes and all the documents that lawyers produce, it turns out it's a really hairy problem to get insight out of those. And so I was actually sort of drawn into it for the intellectual challenge. But fast forward where I'm more on the administrative side of IT in a law firm now, and people joke, it's like, so you head IT for a law firm, what do you have, like 2-3 people? Like, do you handle support calls? How does that work? And I say, well, the firms that I've worked with are anywhere between 1,000 to 2,000 users, many hundreds of lawyers, offices across the country, some global, teams, IT teams ranging from 50 to 100 people. And that's everything from traditional desktop support, but cybersecurity, document management, analytics, AI, financial reporting. I mean, it's a corporation. It's a big business.
So you mentioned that kind of the nature of the text and the documents. What in particular makes that a gnarly problem? What is special about the text of legal documents, and what is it? The mixture of the Latin, is that part of it? What is it?
One might think, no, it honestly, from what we found, this goes back to some of the early days of machine learning. Uh, a lot of it's keyword based. So you'd extract concepts out of documents and looking for frequent use of terms and things like that. And the problem boils down to the way lawyers like to write, which is 90% of content that really doesn't necessarily say much. And it's almost like filler to, like, it's the standard language that's in every contract. So it doesn't really mean anything at some point. But then tucked away is, one term of art that may be mentioned once or twice in the document, but is critical to the outcome, right? And so trying to piece all that out and all the jargon and the language and that kind of stuff wrapped together, it's a hard problem.
Yeah, lawyers end up taking the fun out of everything. Even Santa comes with a clause.
Oh, wow. Okay, so we're starting the dad
Oh,
jokes already.
there you
That's,
go.
oh my goodness. Wow. Okay. All right. I told a really bad one yesterday, and I got great groans out of it. So I'm gonna
Sweet.
bore you all with this one. So, a bear walks into a bar, and bartender's like, "Hey, buddy, what'll you have?" He's like, "I think I'll have a beer." The bartender's like, "Okay, sure, but what's with the big paws?" And he looks and he's like, "Oh, I've had these since I was born. I don't know."
Nice.
Yeah, that's a bad one. I got a lot of groans yesterday. Hopefully the audience hopefully you fast forwarded through that. Oh, anyway, both of you.
I do have one that I like telling, which is a rope walks into the bar and bartender looks over at him and goes, "Hey, we don't serve your kind here," and he kind of shoos him away, and rope goes outside and he kind of twists himself all up and kind of rats the end of his hair there and walks back in. He's like, "Hey, aren't you that rope that was just in here?" And he's like, "Nope, I'm afraid not."
Wow. I love that one. So that's a good one.
I can't compete. Not even.
All right. So back to our regularly scheduled programming. So the AI in legal, it's a gnarly problem. It sounds like you said you had some history with, like, did you say bioinformatics or something along those lines?
Yeah.
That sounds like it might not be dissimilar, because there's a lot of, like, junk coding in DNA that you have to kind of throw away and look for those little nuggets of things that are really interesting.
Yes.
Is there a parallel there?
Yeah, you're not wrong. Yeah, a lot of and interestingly, a lot of the sort of the text mining algorithms that we used in legal, I then sort of had a sabbatical out of legal for about 3-4 years, worked at a tech startup. And one of the algorithms we used to predict the efficacy of, like, global policies this was for the Gates Foundation. We used, like, the same kind of text mining kind of approaches on public health data. So yeah, you're absolutely right. Like, you have, and that's the beauty of some of these large language models and things like that, is if you can encode the data in a certain way, it's a spade. Like, it all understands at some way. It's math at the end of the day. It's ones and zeros. Yeah.
Very cool.
So.
What about, like, I mean, because you have a long history of AI and machine learning work. You've been doing it for a long time. This kind of just explosion of interest and everybody talks about AI. Like my grandpa is talking about AI. Everybody talks about stuff like that. Like, is that exciting for you? I mean, I know a lot of kind of some of the old terms are like, "Oh, it's about time," but, like, is this exciting for you? Is this opening up new opportunities? Tell me about that.
Yeah. Yes. I mean, it's incredibly exciting. I think back, I consider myself a little bit of an OG on this front, just because just pure luck. Like, I had started in computer science at a time when these kind of algorithms were first coming into, like, e-commerce and things like that. So I got early experience with these kind of tools, and I could see their potential, but I could also see that we were, I couldn't predict, but we were decades out. The algorithms were still pretty fragile. The data just wasn't there yet. I mean, you could invest millions of dollars and years of effort to build out a team and a product that maybe works 70 or 80% of the time. And and you tried to point it to an adjacent use case and it just fell apart, right? It was just very fragile, very narrow, very expensive. And I think what I'm most excited about it now is just the democratization, ease of access of this stuff. Anybody, it's like cloud and mobile, all these things now. Anybody with a internet connection and some coding capability, or even just some analyst capability, can really leverage these kind of tools. So yeah, I'm bullish and I'm pretty excited about it.
Awesome. Yeah, I think that's like the evolution of AI. It's been around a long time, as you know. As you said, you're an OG in the field. Is it purely on the computation side that we were just kind of waiting for the computers to catch up to the theory and the algorithms that were constructed years and years ago, and now we finally have the horsepower to do it? Is that all there is to it, or is there some other, like, did we unlock some insights in research that as well, or
Yeah.
is it one or the other? Or is it both? What's going on?
Yeah, it's both, definitely, for sure, and then a number of items, and they've all been discrete innovations over the last probably decade or so that have really started to amp this up. Definitely more computational power and more storage and ability to sort of load things in memory at scale. Really, I mean, that is the driving force. Without that, they couldn't have taken these small language models and built them to large language models. It's staggering the kind of volume that they're pumping into these algorithms now. But there was also a lot of clever research coming out of some academia, but a lot of Meta and Google and others that were developing more clever ways to have some of these neural networks inspecting and sort of thinking, as it were. A lot of clever math involved in that. But then just the access to the data. Like, had we all not been contributing to the social media morass for the last 2 decades, there wouldn't have been a lot for it to ingest and to train on. So that was key as well.
So with the increase in computing power and having these now large language models available, are you seeing that smaller companies are getting involved with using AI as part of their suite of products that they use or tools that they use?
Yeah. It depends on the industry and the size of the company, but definitely I'll share from my own experience in law. Uh, Law firms, I mentioned, they're bigger than one would think, but they're still in that small, medium enterprise level. Often several hundred million in revenue, topping out at a couple of billion. So good resources to do things, but these aren't Fortune 500 companies. And I will say that a lot of the medium to larger law firms are at a minimum looking at purpose-built generative AI tools. They've been using things like predictive coding in e-discovery, which is looking at large volumes of documents to say, is this responsive to a discovery request or not, analyzing contracts. So there are purpose-built products. I have not seen a lot of really custom development, sort of building your own custom models and things like that within individual organizations at that size. There's some R&D and experimentation around that, but you're not seeing, again, they're not tech companies in the traditional sense. They're not going to sell these products. And so you see less of that until you really get to the high end.
So would you let AI write a contract for you?
As not in the law firm, yeah, absolutely. For me personally, yeah. If I need a lease for my college bound son, sure, probably could do that and not practice law. But yeah, it is funny because I've looked at so many contracts just as a procurement function as a CIO, that I actually have gotten pretty good at reading the non-legal aspects of it, sort of the commercial terms. And I have found that these kind of tools actually do a really good job of summarizing a contract, maybe tweaking a clause here or there. It's scary good. Now, if you look outside of law and into other industries, uh, where I see most companies getting, like small to medium sized companies getting value today, is in a couple of areas. One is just the obvious, like content creation, could be, sales literature, marketing, recruiting emails, things of that nature, just personal productivity, particularly in that lead gen space. And then definitely on the software development side, if it is a software company, the GitHub Copilots and even just ChatGPT actually really has, and I've heard stats somewhere north of 30%, 40% improvements in productivity. Um, Hopefully we see that with quality as well, not just productivity, from some of the use of these tools. So it's definitely has its place now and it continues to grow, but there's a lot of places it breaks down spectacularly, so it's not all sunshine and roses.
So you mentioned you're a CIO. I'm curious, has at that level, are you now free of the technologist curse of as soon as somebody outside the industry finds out that you're in technology, that they're like, "Oh, can you fix my computer or my phone?"
No, we never escape that. I am
Shucks.
currently helping rebuild my father's new wife's computer. So that's been yeah. No, never escape it. Although I'll share, my wife is a lawyer, so I am surrounded, and she got a call from my nephew about a what was it, an offer on a house going south and needing help with that. And my wife's like, she does family law, and she's like, I have no, but I you should talk to an attorney, just call, not me.
So you're kind of like an ambulance. You're always surrounded by lawyers, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Nice. Well done. Well done.
I like that.
Yeah, I had a situation where I used ChatGPT to create a little contract, a personal, one-on-one situation where we needed a contract, and I had it generate. And I do have a friend who's a lawyer, and I was like, hey, I don't want to overstep, but is there anything I need to make sure that's going to be in this contract? Or he's like, he's like, yeah, I'd be happy to look at the documents. I sent it to him, and his response was like, I'm not really happy that ChatGPT is this good at this. Like, it actually did a pretty darn good job. I was surprised that he said that. I was like, I thought it was just going to be some like rudimentary, but no, he said it actually did a pretty good job. There was one thing it omitted, but he's like, just tell it to fill this in, and I gave him, and he's like, man, I think I might
Yeah,
be
and
out of
it's
a job.
been, and I think this is going to be the same for a lot of, uh, I'll say professionals, white collar kind of positions, because you know, we all, and I would say software developers are the same way, executives are the same way. We aspire to the most high value, high cognitive tasks that we do. And we think that that's our job and that's how we define ourselves. But then when you actually look at the day, and I do this myself, right? I look at my day, I'm like, well, my day is a lot of lower value manual tasks that are just have to get done that, maybe eat up 60%, 70% of the day. If you can automate or simplify a lot of those and streamline them, then you free up more of that time for the real value add. Because like with lawyers, right? Like the drafting of a standard contract is not the epitome of the value that they bring, right? They know those obscure instances. They know where those have gone south. They know why this particular example is bad because da 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 da. That's the experience that they bring to the table. That's what you need. That's what clients want to pay for. So it's this, and that's a continuation, right? I mean, you guys have been in software development for companies that are looking at ways to digitize and streamline and automate things, even pre some of these recent tools. So it's a continuum in my mind.
So one of the things that I think is interesting. So you're a technologist in a business with a clientele that is not known to be technologists. I mean, they're debaters, they're arguers, they're researchers. How does that kind of change, like working with a non-technical audience?
Yeah. Uh, I will do you one better. I will say it is a non-technical audience that in most cases in large law firms is very egalitarian and not top down, not hierarchical. So from a change management perspective, and that's when I think of non-technical, I think more of what's the change journey. There's an education element to that for sure, but then there's also just building the awareness and the adoption, and it's a grassroots guerrilla adoption kind of scenario. You're in a large law firm, there's literally hundreds of different sort of fiefdoms or practices that roll up to practice groups that roll up to the managing partner. And so there's this whole structure, but at the end of the day, it's one partner makes a decision whether to use something or not. So I think some of the things I've found to be helpful is one is just being how to phrase it. Talking in their language and putting it to the problem it's solving first. Like if you come out and say, well, this isn't, we all do it. Like I was just talking about all the great things ChatGPT can do. It's like, no, what's the problem that you need solved? That's where to start, and then finding ways to solve that. A lot of times it's not a sophisticated tool. Half the time it's like, do you really need to be even doing this thing that you're doing, or can we just not? Like, do you have to have this approved every time? If you approve it every time, right? Do you need that step? So that's streamlining and so forth, and then getting into just the normal technology we have, and then finally into the automation. But yeah, it's an educational journey because I'll share some stories, not from my current firm, of lawyers that have struggled with copying and pasting from one document to another. Meaning they don't know how to copy and paste from one document to another, or how to attach a file to an email and things of this nature. So yeah, there's a spectrum there, but I will say that this probably goes for everybody, though. It's not just lawyers. Technology has evolved so fast that unless you are, even if you're a technologist, but unless you're a technologist, like you just don't stand a chance. And I think people think the younger generation will be better than the older generation, but I'm finding that not to be the case. I was talking with a colleague yesterday that there is this sweet spot of which I'm looking at. You two are in this sweet spot with me, where we grew up not yet digitally native, but sort of digital curious and digital tinkering. And we really, like, it was all pretty shaky ground when we were working with it. And we had to really learn, really understand it, get immersed in it. And I think we stand a better shot at keeping up. But young folks that are like my kids that are digitally native, they've got an iPad in their hands since they're two, kind of thing. Like they haven't had to go through a lot of those learning lessons. And a lot of them I find in young lawyers and young professionals in general, they're not any more tech savvy than a partner that's 55, 60. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know if I've talked about this on the podcast before. I know I've talked to some people about that before, that I think, it's a bit of an injustice that, with the era that we grew up in, and having to deal with command prompts and in self-configuration of just an operating system just to get, into, like, when I first started using Windows, you had to type in Win 3.1 in order to launch Windows, right? And it was like, in now it just comes up automatically for you, and it's like, so you have no concept of that there's something underlying, and you don't get that kind of core knowledge of what the system actually is and how the pieces fit together. You just kind of take it for granted that, yeah, I just kick open the computer and there it is. And so I think there's a lack of fundamental understanding, and it's like, unless you've gone through the pain of being like the first ones through the door and starting to sift through the horde of information and technology, then you don't get the appreciation for the clean house, right? It's
Correct.
kind of
Yeah.
abstract analogy, but
Well, I'll share that I recently toured one of the local career centers in town, and I was blown away. Like the sophistication of the programming that they developed, the size of it. This had like 2,000 students, and they had all different kind of disciplines, but they had a programming track. They had a PC support track. They had a drone on unmanned systems track as well. And they were doing exactly what you just described. They were learning the fundamentals. They were tearing things down. They were building them back up. And I think that that's so invaluable as an educational perspective. I wish, like, one of the real crimes of our current educational space is there's a lack of that technology fundamentals in really any public schooling or K through 12 schooling, let alone cybersecurity or programming or anything else. And it's not that everybody's going to become a technologist, but everybody needs to have some foundation, even in things like logic and analysis, to help in this new era, right? Like, you don't have to be a programmer, but you need to understand conditional logic, for instance, and that's a really valuable skill no matter who you are.
Yeah, it's kind of like, I know, like, towards my later part of my education, there was a big focus on critical thinking. Like, they want you to be a free thinker, solve problems for yourself, and do that kind of thing. And I think that, to your point, having a logical thinking spot would benefit society as a whole, because there's a lot of things out there that it's like, why would you do that? That makes no sense, right? And there's one of my favorite quotes is a Benjamin Franklin was like, common sense is not that common, right? And training in logical thinking helps solve that problem. And I really, yeah, that should be, I'm trying to think of how you would reorder STEM into some kind of word like melts or something to add logic into the acronym, right?
Melts.
I think you started the trend right here.
There you go. So you heard it here first on / melts is the new education system for math, English, logic,
Engineering.
Engineering. That's right. I'm sorry, not English. I always think of the core classes as being STEM, but you're right. It's engineering, logic, technology, and science, right?
That's right. Welcome to the Melts School.
The Melts School.
You said something earlier.
What do they call them? Like ITT tech is a vocational school.
Okay.
Yes. We melt things down. Get your certification in melting things down in recycling.
My 13-year-old would love that.
Yeah, right?
Future.
So you mentioned earlier, and I think we talked on the prep call for this episode about this kind of concept, but you mentioned that generative AI, I think in particular, is particularly terrible at certain things. And I forget the phrase you used. There was some sort of, what would you say on that?
Yeah, I've heard it referred to as the jagged frontier, which I think is a great visual cue.
And that's getting a Star Trek image, like, of a planet with all this crystalline structure, and they try to beam down, and it's a jagged frontier.
You're going to lose some of the red shirt guys on that when you beam them down on that one, right?
Yeah, definitely. Maybe more than one this episode.
Yeah, that away party didn't do so well. They won't be back next season. So the visualization is like that. It's, and I'm like painting with my hand in the air, and nobody can see that on the podcast. But like there's spikes of things that it's really good at among all the things that it's trying to do, and others that are not so great. And I think we've encountered that. I've tried to do like diagrams and stuff like that, but it's good at generating text. But then when it comes to like even for the things that it's particularly good at in a business setting, which is what, like what we do, right? We try to apply these technologies to solving real business problems and adding value to people's lives. What do we think? Is the jury still out? Like where is that actual business value going to be delivered to kind of that business community? The people are going to be paying all these big bucks for this stuff. Where do you see that sweet spot?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. And to carry on that jagged frontier concept, like it used to be easier to describe these tools to business people, and that's part of the challenge. So yeah, I used to liken it to, you're walking on a mountain path and as long as you stay on that path and it's straight and narrow, you're good. But you take 2 steps the wrong direction and down you go. Like that was very much the experience of some of these older machine learning technologies. And then you fast forward to ChatGPT, and it's like, it feels like I'm this wide open field and I can just go any direction and it's wonderful. And I'm like, it's sort of like that, but then every 10 feet or so, there's a sinkhole and down you go, and you can't predict where. And so that's part of it is part of the difficulty of applying this in a business sense is businesses need certainty, they need consistency, they need risk management and reduction, all those kinds of fancy things. And that's hard to do when you just don't know when it will succeed and when it won't. And it does so in through my own experience, it does so in weird ways, things you would expect it to be able to do well. It can, and then just one little tweak of the prompt and off it goes. So I think the way that we've thought about this in a business sense is treating it, anthropologically as a person, and probably a young, eager analyst who will give you a great answer no matter what, even if it's wrong. So it has to be validated, fact checked, etc. Relying on it autonomously is we joked about it in our prep call, the ChatGPT lawyer. And there's actually several of them because apparently they don't read the trade press and see the first person making the boneheaded move, so they go and do it again. But using ChatGPT to cite cases that don't actually exist, there are plenty of tools, including just Google, to go figure out if this is a real case. And they did zero verification. They just literally took the output, put it in Word, shipped it. Don't recommend that. But where I think that businesses are looking to get value, we talked about the obvious ones of content creation for social media, email productivity. Okay. I think where I'm seeing more business value is in summarization. It's much better at summarizing and interrogating content you give it than just open-ended questions. Because it constrains its universe a bit and it's less likely to make things up. It still can, but it's less likely. So that could be, summarizing a contract or comparing a contract and a red line to see what the issues list is, sort of what do we care about or not. It could be taking a podcast or a Teams meeting and taking that recording and transcribing it, then creating a summary with action items. There's a lot of value that comes from that if you can get over some of the ethical and privacy hurdles that corporations are struggling with that. So I think those kind of summarization use cases, extractive use cases for pulling data out, that's where I'm seeing a lot of commercial success, like in the legal tech space and in other industries.
So would it be fair to say that as a general rule when using AI, regardless of which domain of AI you're using, it's kind of a trust but verify?
Absolutely. or yeah, very tentatively be skeptically, possibly it's okay, then verify. Yeah.
Almost paranoid. Yeah.
Which is tough, by the way, in the industries that I think could see the most value in it, like health, law, all the text-rich fields are also the ones where you need a high level of trust and certainty in it. But I point out humans are not 100% accurate, right?
Yeah.
Not even close. So in fact, there was a study of senior lawyers reviewing documents. I can't remember if they were like agreements or briefs or something like that, but they were reviewing documents, and there was a checklist of things they were supposed to find, and they hovered around 85-90% accuracy, and the latest GPT models were around 93-95% accuracy. So what's the benchmark that you're going up against?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, if it's being fed with human information, unless it can do its own critical thinking on it to determine what's right or wrong, I don't think you'll see it surpass, right? So at the end of the day, it's using data that's human generated. So, there's always that piece. And I did see something interesting in a television show a couple weeks ago. and it's one of these, medical dramas, but I like that's an interesting take on AI in the health industry is that this guy was using an AI companion chat bot type thing, and he started asking it medical questions like, what could this be? And of course, it was all like, doom and gloom responses, kind of like, checking your symptoms against WebMD. It's like, you could die, you could die, you could die. Like every response was like, yes, that might work, but you could die, type of thing. And it was just like almost to the point of like decision paralysis. Like you couldn't move forward because it's like, well, no matter what I do, I'm going to die. I'm like, well, yeah, because it's always a possibility whenever you're getting any kind of procedure done, right? But it was also, their take on it was like it wants it's trying to feed you the answers that you're looking for as based on what you're prompting it to do. And he ended up using the example of you could die from a paper cut, right? Because it could get infected. That infection could spread and go to your heart, and you could end up dying. And it's like, okay, but that's like a very, 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 small case.
Yeah.
So,
It needs to add
but it's a
probability to
possibility.
all that. Yeah.
Yeah, you were talking about like the people being able to verify and those sort of things in a business setting. I know some companies are like, I need to understand why my system told me this answer. So kind of like that. I don't know what it's like the justification, like, but with like neural networks and these like weird models, it's just a bunch of floating point numbers. It's hard to like really inspect. And it's always been a problem, I think, with neural networks. It's very hard to explain how did it weave its way through and, back propagate all the weights and everything and all the cool stuff that it did to get to this answer, this classification answer. It's very hard to explain. And that's back when neural networks were small, only single layer. And it was hard back then. How hard is it now? And is there anything, are they solving that problem? Are they making that better now that we have higher compute power? Is that a thing?
Yeah. No, it's a great area, and it's unsolved, and I don't have a good sense of how quickly they'll be able to solve for that. In some sense, the models are able to articulate to some extent sort of how you can ask it to give its show its work, give it where it's how it's quote unquote thinking about it. Uh, but in terms of tracing it back, and most importantly to like where's the source of that content coming from? Is it trusted? Is it verified? Um, that is where it breaks apart. It falls down. And so one of the things that, if you've ever heard of RAG, it's retrieval augmented generation, which is basically like take this answer and run it through a search engine and check everything, and then like fill in the correct answers, or vice versa. You go get the content first, and then use that to build your answer. So both directions. That's one solve for it, but it's not elegant. It's tough. It has its own issues. Uh, I think the traceability to the source content is probably as valuable as anything else and the hardest to do, because to your point, once all this data is ingested into the model, you lose any sense of where it came from. And there's great examples of, or not great, terrible examples of, you can ask all the image generators, the different ones, to create a picture of a CEO. And 2 years ago it was old white male on every example because, hey, it was looking at the biased training data. And then some of them got a little bit better, but you can tell they were trying to prompt engineer around it to try to solve for that. But then you go just one hop over and it's still giving you the old white guy. So there's, I think transparency is going to be critical to that, and you've seen OpenAI and these others pushing back hard against that. They're fighting the IP battle. They're licensing some content or agreeing to licensing deals, but they don't want to go down that path. So I don't know how we solve for that, to be honest. Yeah.
Yeah, we work with some clients that are highly regulated industries and those sort of things, and that's often the fear is like, I got to be able to tell our auditors how did we arrive at this conclusion, and with this black box thing, how can we even do that? So I don't know. I just thought that was an interesting aspect of kind of the problems that we're running into in the AI space nowadays.
And from a legal aspect, is there anything like copyright or trademark involved with stuff that AI is generating?
Yeah, this is where I'll put the asterisk of I'm not a lawyer. I do not represent my firm, but I'm happy to pontificate on it. Yeah, I mean it's uncharted territory. It's really unsolved for. There's no case law yet. There's sort of nothing's gone to trial and been settled or been decided that would other people could point back to. But clearly, like they have a weak leg to stand on. And it's similar to some of the music, the music companies of yore and things like that. So I think what will ultimately happen though is they obviously have they need to win. Like they need a positive outcome. It's not like they can just pull that content out of their model and be fine. And so where I think they will land, as they have in other kinds of disputes like this, is coming up with some kind of reimbursement scheme, and basically like people get some royalties for their content being used. If I had a crystal ball, but I think that's one of the conundrums of you don't know what it's sourced on, so you don't know whether it's legitimate content. It's why it's so important, again, not to take it verbatim, because it could be verbatim text. It often is not, but I'll share a story. So my oldest is a senior in high school, so we were filling out the Common App, and one of those Common App prompts is to write an essay, and they give you like 7 options, right? So I had started to type into, I think, Google Docs. I had started to type in the question, or no, it was in ChatGPT. I started to type out the question, and it like knew. It said it filled out the rest of the question. It knew the question verbatim from the Common App because that's such a prolific system that people use. So like it was very clearly verbatim giving the text back. And if that were a copyrighted material like a book, that's a problem. But yeah, Aaron, the other thing that we found is privacy. So like that's with content coming in. But if you're writing code for a company, or you are generating proprietary content, like if you're using ChatGPT and feeding your content into that stuff can go right back into the model and could show up in somebody else's. So I think it was Samsung maybe that like forbade their developers from using it. So a lot of the interest in enterprise is using closed models, those that won't train on your data or content moderate. So to have someone come in and inspecting what you're doing in the model, that's absolutely key for regulated industries.
In would hosting your own um, language model within your domain so that it's not going outside, would that be another workaround for that knowledge sharing of
Yes.
property?
Yes, yeah. There's a couple different ways you could, if you had a tech savvy enough team or a development company that you work with, you could bring either bring an open source model, and there's some very good ones out there now. You could bring that into your private cloud or Azure AWS, etc. Another option is to go with a corporate friendly uh, LLM or a generative AI model. Like in legal, there's one called Harvey. There's also CoCounsel and these other products. It's a SaaS solution, so it's vendor provided, but they're used to working with regulated industries, so they'll create basically like a private database or a private instance just for you, and it doesn't cross contaminate. So there's ways to get around, but it's not going to be $20 a month like ChatGPT.
Right.
Yeah,
Now, is
It's going to
that
be more like hosting your own database type of
absolutely.
scenario, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
now for those type of products? Are they evolving your model, or are they really just maintaining it like kind of a context history of for a private context history and kind of augmenting your searches with that? I don't or conversations.
Yeah, they differ. So some are purely static because they don't want to give any indication. Even let's take law or consulting, another profession. They don't want content from one client being cross-contaminated with content from another client, right? Because that's confidential information. So often they don't train on the model. But there are, they try to learn, they want to learn your behavior, your habits, who you are, because one of the things that I've felt strongly about since the early days is the more context you have about what someone is, who they are, and what they're trying to accomplish, the better your responses can be. They're a senior lawyer in this office versus a first year associate. They know the type of law that you practice, and they're going to be much more intelligent about their responses. But it's that balancing act of how much are you as a user willing to give up to share in order to get better quality results, and that's always been the tension. Yeah,
That's kind of true in live communication as well. Like, one of the sayings is know your audience. And if you know your audience, you can present your topics more effectively. And even communication styles, is like, is this person a ask first and then support with details, or give them the details and then pop the question at the end? Because, people react differently and have, they prefer to get information in different orders.
yeah,
So,
yeah. That's a great point. That's a great point. And that's interestingly, you can tweak quite a bit the responses from some of these models just by telling them who you are, like who your audience is, right? I'm writing an executive summary for a CEO of a company. It will keep the pleasantries to a minimum and get to the point, and focus on the outcome, right? So it's pretty responsive to those kinds of things.
I like to do the thing where I'm writing an email to a client. Can you write this in the style of Snoop Dogg? And it's pretty entertaining when you do that. Yeah.
well,
We're talking about like data context and all of this stuff. It occurs to me that and I see, like, in the industry when we talk to clients, data seems to be a pretty huge concern. What does it look like for companies to get themselves to be like that AI ready, right? Like, it's got to feed you got to feed a lot of data into these AI algorithms and everything. What does it look like for a company? What do they need to do? What are some of those steps that you need to do to be AI ready with your data?
Yeah, yeah, and it's been a problem even pre AI. It was always get your data ready so you can use business intelligence and analytics and dashboards and things like that. So it's a long standing pain point. I will tell you what I've seen companies do wrong, and I have done this myself in an earlier younger life. Uh, is trying to boil the ocean and have like a grand data strategy, and you've got this data governance committee, and you're labeling every element, and you're disputing whether this field means this or that, and those projects can go on for years and cost hundreds of thousands of dollars or more, and they're not outcome driven. So I try to have a much more pragmatic outcome based approach that starts with what are the likely uses of the data, uh, that you like think of use cases, imagine those use cases. Now, what are those kinds of data fields or documents that you would need? And then go start cleaning up and working on that. In law firms, for instance, so use that as an example. It could be the closing sets, when you sign off on your mortgage for your house, there's a set of documents at the end that's sort of after everything is negotiated. Like that's, the golden book that has all the data you need. Gather those up, because oftentimes they're not in one place and they're not labeled properly and you don't even know where to find them, but that's like gold when it comes to information. Think of like patient records, how messy patient records are, but there's probably those few points in time that are critical, or a few data points. So I think it comes down to context. But I'll say that one of the things that is really exciting me about some of this technology is that this generative AI can be part of the solution, because as I mentioned, they're really good at extraction and summarization, that including like finding structured data in a document, or classifying documents into certain buckets. So I think that can help us accelerate what would have otherwise been a very tedious and manual sort of data tagging exercise. And I've seen sort of commercial products and companies doing just that.
Yeah, I think I'm remembering like some of our projects. I mean, even when Aaron and I worked together in the past, we there was always this struggle of like, what are those? You know, you talked about points in time, but I think of them like events. You know, as you're interacting with a customer, or in our case, it was a student. What are those events as our interactions? You don't want to write down every single thing, but there are absolutely pretty important events in the relationship of interacting with your users that you want to make sure you're writing down. And it was a struggle. We were like, we probably need to write this data down somewhere, right? We probably need to, like, well, what are you using it for? Well, I don't know yet, but it's pretty important. Like, our user just signed up for a service. Probably should write down everything about that event and capture it, you know? And, and the struggle is like, okay, 2 years down the road, we need that data. I can't go back in time and then write it down. It's gone. That event is gone. So it's how do you strike that balance of what are all the things that you want to write down as they're happening, and choose, like you said, that you got to try to envision some of the things that the questions you would want to answer, but it's hard. You don't have a crystal ball all the time. But again, you can't go back in time and write it down. But I do always stress to people, even if you're going to extrapolate the data and normalize it and put it into a nice data model, still keep the source, like the original, like unadulterated data. Keep that in case we need to go back and redo the mappings or whatever the case may
Because
be.
we had
Please,
to
please,
do that
please.
all the time. Like
Yeah.
in
Oh
the
yeah.
for the content system we were working in, we kept iterating over the process, and it was like, oh, if we can pull this out of the content, and this makes it a little bit more user friendly in this aspect, or in this vein, or this facet, um, this is something that's useful for a search. So we add that in there, and then we have to go back and reprocess everything, which was, I think it took like a week to 10 days to reprocess everything in our archive, because that was content was what we were doing. So, in having something that could analyze that and do that automatically would have been a game changer for that. Like, I could totally see, integrating an AI kind of bot in there to go through and just go through and say, oh yeah, this one needs to be updated, like almost as a middleman, and say, okay, yeah, you pulled this one. Oh, and look, you're missing something, so I'm going to go ahead and do that for you, and then populate it. So that could be very useful.
Yeah,
Um,
and it's still going to be quality checked. So yeah,
Right,
yeah,
right. And
by
yeah,
person.
because
Yeah.
this was at the very beginning of the process too, where
Hmm.
you're like, we used to call it a content shopper. You were shopping for the content you wanted to use. Do you remember that term, the content shopper,
I
James?
do.
And it was one of those things where it's like, okay, I'm trying to put something together as a package, and I have all this great content to use, but I need to be able to find it in the context that I need it. So yeah, I could see that. So in that kind of leads me into a question that I was thinking about as you're talking about the last thing too, is that, so for our technologists that are listening that want to dip their toe into AI and kind of get a feel for what it can do, where would you suggest they start? What might be a good entry point for technologists to kind of get familiar with this?
Yeah, I think a couple different avenues. The first and most obvious, and I'm guessing a lot of them are already doing this because I know some of our developers are, and my development friends are doing this. Is go get a ChatGPT Plus subscription or Perplexity or Anthropic, Claude. But, pick your LLM. Uh, but get a premium subscription. They're $20 a month, um, or you know, or just start with the free version too. It's not bad, but start getting familiarity with it. It takes practice and experience to build up facility with talking to these prompts. And I it was sort of two things on it. It's a little humbling when you've been working in it for 20 years, like I have been, and then I step up to like the blank space to write a prompt for ChatGPT, and my first chats were like, I probably have them in my history. They were just terrible. Like you know, they were vague, they were short. I wasn't giving it any guidance, etc. Like I was not being a good delegator. Um, so definitely suggest just getting the reps. Trying it for, personal stuff too, not just coding, because it's helpful that the skills translate. Um, but specifically with coding, I would say two things. Um, it's great. I have found it's great for someone like myself who's not a strong coder and sort of dips in and dabbles, but was a developer for years previously. Like it is an accelerator for me because I remember enough to know what I want to do, but I don't remember all the functions and the syntax and that, like, specifically. It's great at that acceleration of helping me, shake those cobwebs loose and produce code. It's also a great tutor. And back to that point about like the struggle and figuring things out. One of the things that I think these kind of tools will be great for education for is it is very much able to, and it often does it without prompting, explain the rationale of why it did it, tells you about the libraries you're using. Here's why this logic works this way. Here are some things you should think about for error handling. It's very good as a tutor for all levels of coding capability. So I definitely encourage just tinker. And then the second thing I would say is, because the ultimate real value of these tools is going to be plugging them in to applications and workflows, is get an API key, pay $20 for credits for some tokens, use a small model like the GPT-4o mini or whatever, or even an open source one. Just start getting experience interacting with it in a programmatic way, because that's where everything's at. So, and everything I just said is things that our developers are doing at my current firm, to sort of ramp up from an R&D perspective.
Nice.
Yeah.
And one thing you mentioned, prompt writing. I think I've talked about, prompt writing before. Is that I find, because I'm kind of in that first step. I'm looking to get into that second step where I've been tinkering with different AIs out there and practicing writing different prompts, and integrating it into my IDE that I develop with. And now I'm starting to look at, okay, maybe I want a language model on my system that I can start playing with and sending instructions to. But I did find that when I was writing prompts, that it's kind of, we've been trained to use search engines, and with search engines you look for very specific, very few terms to try and narrow your search, and the AI prompts seem to be the exact opposite. The more detail and description you can put into your prompt, then the better your result
Yeah.
is. Do you find that that's an accurate statement?
Absolutely. Yes. Yes. Yeah. I would. I relate it to delegating to a team member. It, and I have done some engineers don't make great managers, I've discovered. So it took me years just to get decent at it. And that's a
Did you hear
question
that,
that's
James?
questionable.
Oh, shots fired, man!
Harsh,
Wow.
harsh.
But I think I'm well aware already, so I'm pretty
Yeah.
self-aware when it comes to that. Thanks anyway, Aaron.
Thanks. Well, we build. Let's say we build those muscles. It's a muscle you can practice. Yeah. But delegating, like, yes, just go do this. Go write this piece of code. Write a function to do this. You tell a programmer to do that. You tell ChatGPT to do that. You're going to get so results. So to your point, yeah, the more specific, the more granular. Tell me what success looks like, kind of thing. The other thing that's really it's very meta is you can ask it to write a prompt for you, like write a good prompt for me that does this, this, and this. And in the prompts that it generates sometimes are a page long, right? And it's, this is, you're an agent, you're this purpose. Then here's the steps that you do. Here's what success looks like. Here's an example. Yeah, it's pretty cool.
So what's one of your favorite, like, kind of tips and tricks type thing when it comes to prompt writing? That whole write a prompt for me, I love that write one for me thing. What are some other, like, ideas that when you latched onto, you're like, oh man, this is night and day different. It's much better results.
Yeah. Definitely, as I mentioned earlier, like that context and persona, like telling it a bit about who I am and what I'm looking to do. is one of those. One of the simple things, but can get lost is start a new chat, start a new thread every time you're sort of switching context even a little, because all of that context of your thread starts muddling with the large language model the more that you go and the more sort of further afield you go. So don't treat it like a text with your family or friends that just keeps going and going and going. Start new. Beyond that, though, I mean, it's definitely that point of putting more detail in it and telling it what you want as an output, right? Being very explicit about that. And Aaron, you're right. The more, the better. I've also found if you're trying to, and gets a little bit different, but I've used it to try to go a little bit more like brainstorming and sort of shifting more toward like lateral thinking, help me think about things differently or novel concepts and things like that. It can do a pretty good job at that, but it's very sensitive to the prompt. So if you say something, look for examples like this or this, every one of its examples comes back with like that sprinkled in, right? I'm looking for health and climate tech. So everything says health and climate tech in it, and it's not sort of pulling anything else outside. So you have to be careful. Can be sort of literal to what you're asking it for.
So maybe you don't give it examples of what you're looking for.
Correct. Yeah. Sometimes it's like you could give an example of what you want the output to look like, but in your tee up to it, like I am looking for, sometimes should be as general as possible if you're using it to brainstorm new ideas. And then you could give it an example of what the output looks like, but you still want that to be more open-ended. So again, it's sort of contradictory, but yeah, if you want a precise answer, more context, more detail, if you want it to be a little bit more creative, I'm doing quotes there. I know it's not creative. You can be more general about it. The other thing I'll say too, just to finish the thought, is highly underutilized, and I'm just now starting to use it more, is the multimodal, meaning giving it an image, using the voice mode. I had this is geeky, but I read Scientific American. It's a guilty pleasure. They have these numeric puzzles every issue, and one of them I was a little bit like I'm stumped on, so I took a picture of it, put it in ChatGPT, and it solved it with like 5 steps of like, here's what this pattern is, here's the number that's incorrect, here's how you would replace that number and why it replaced. And I was like, we're done. We're doomed. But that was just from a picture. That's all I sent it was the picture. Nothing else.
And wow. Skynet went live.
Yeah, that's right. Plug me into the Matrix now, and I'll just be eating steak forever.
Yeah.
And one of the
I can do that really well, but if I ask it for like an itinerary in Venice, forget about it. So
right.
I took a class on generative AI or something. One of them, Andrew Ng thing on somewhere, Udemy or something like that. Anyway, they talked about the notion of like 0 shot, 1 shot. So that whole notion of like telling it like, this is what I want the output to look like. If I was giving you this input, this is what the output should look like. And I was pretty amazed at how much it improved when you give like, here's an example of what I'm looking for with this prompt. And it's like, oh, okay, I get it. And then you ask your real question, it's like it can learn from that and figure that out better. I thought that was pretty interesting, and that just kind of blew me away. One thing I saw, I think it was on X. I'm trying to learn to not say Twitter anymore. I saw on X the other night, somebody posted the output or their prompt maybe of what they said, but it was like, ChatGPT, can you tell me something about myself that you think I wouldn't know? That was pretty interesting to get the answers that it was able to like introspect like our conversations, and it told me some things. I'm like, that's pretty interesting. I didn't really make that connection about how I've been interacting with you, that you can gain that much information about me. Pretty scary.
It's kind of like Googling yourself, isn't it?
Yeah.
I don't know if I'd want to go down that rabbit hole.
Yeah, well, it was enlightening.
Dark place.
It was pretty flattering, honestly. It was, you want to think about long-term effects of things, whatever. But it was interesting though. So I thought I challenge everyone to try that out. That was a pretty interesting question to try. All right.
Well, I
Where are we
think
at?
this is a good place to go on to our ship it or skip it topic.
Ship or skip, everybody we gotta tell us if you ship or skip.
So we'll start off with chat bots. Ship it or skip it.
I'm honestly going to say skip it. Uh, yeah, I think the real value, as I mentioned before, is in more integration into the workflow, and like chatbots just still feel very, I don't know, customer servicey. So yeah, we're past that.
Yeah, I'm gonna jump in and I'm gonna say skip it too. I find them one, it's taking up real estate on the screen most of the time because it usually pops up in the corner and it's like in my way, and I don't generally trust the answers because I know it's a bot, and I've tried a few of them and I get it. It was like, no, that's not what I'm looking for. You're way off. Go away, right? So for me, yeah, it's more of a skip it.
Better than the voice automated systems on like Delta and all that, but not by much. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
Market
I
numero
think
dos.
I'm probably skip it in its current like state of the art because I have found that the experience is not great. I found there are a few here and there that are like, well, that was kind of cool. That saved me time. That enriched my life. But those are very few and far between. So I think it's just in general right now, it's just not quite there. And I'm agreeing with you on the Delta stuff and all that. It's like it reminds me of like the when Kramer from Seinfeld he signed up to be on, of course this is old, movie phone. You remember back in the day you had to call in and
Yeah.
get your what movies are playing, and he signed up to do that, and he's like, press 1 if you'd like to hear times for Schindler's List, and press 2 if this, and they were like pressing the buttons, and he didn't know what button it was, and he's like, why don't you just tell me the movie you want to hear? So it just reminds me, like, is there somebody like, is Kramer on the other line? They're that bad. All right, so the second one, this was we had a conversation the other day, and you brought up in the prep meeting yesterday, actually, autonomous AI based agents. Where are you at on that?
Yeah. Uh, Boy, I wish there was an option C, but just sort of that depends because I'm a consultant, so everything depends. Yeah. I mean, I think in most cases, skip it. I think to your point in current iteration, uh, there, especially if you're trying to use some of these generative AI models or more statistical kind of models, um, like give you a good example. Back to the other one of chatbots. There was a Ford dealership. I don't remember where, somewhere in Middle America, that put like a ChatGPT interface in front of their sales department, and someone went back and forth with them negotiating and got ChatGPT to agree to a Ford F-150 for $1. So autonomous, no. I think with enough guardrails and traditional sort of deterministic systems around it, yeah, absolutely, you could come up with an automated workflow for approvals and things like that that might use LLMs as part of that mix. But yeah, to like do a negotiation, no, we're not there yet. We'll get there, but not yet.
Yeah, I think I'm more on the skip it side, and I think it's more dependent on what you're having the agent do. Like we use some form of this in like our build processes with things like Sonar and things like that. There, it's not really AI based; it's more rules engine based. But I could see something like that being useful in your build system if it's a narrow set that's based on um, you know uh, things like that where it's doing some checking and giving you back suggestions in your processes, but as it has to be very, I think, very very narrow usage. So for me right now it's a skip it. I don't think we're there yet.
Yeah, I don't know. I think I would go ship it just because I do think there's promise there. But I think right now, the state of where it is currently, it's kind of that's not so great. I do think what you said, Matt, on the mixture of more discrete, here's the process, or here's the exact algorithm you use to do that, mixed with some kind of fuzziness of generative AI or whatever, might be interesting. I think absolutely some traditional machine learning type stuff mixing in with those agents would be fantastic, right? Anomaly detection or something like that would be great. But the fuzziness of generative and especially when like that, what do they call it? Is it called like the temperature parameter when that's turned up where it lets it get more and more creative and less predictable? Yeah, that might be a little fuzzy and maybe lead to selling an F-150 for $1. How much do they have? Well, I want one of those TRX Ram trucks. I wonder how much I can get it to give me. Sell me one of those for, because I can't afford one.
We'll make it up on volume. It's okay.
Yeah, exactly. All right, cool. Next one, Aaron. Right?
AI generated art.
Ooh, ooh. Um, I go, I go with ship it because I just sort of love it, for my own use. But yeah, I mean, there's all sorts of IP as we talked about. Like that's being sourced on real artists' work. It's cutting into the copyright. It's cutting into like the copy business and graphic designers and things like that. I think Upwork, which is a freelance site, came out with a study that showed like rates dropping, 20%, 30% since ChatGPT came out, because it's getting more competitive. So I'm mindful of the downstream implications of it. All that said, like just personally, it's pretty amazing what it can do. Um, so I think with those asterisks of if you think about all the externalities and you're mindful of that and come at peace with it or accommodate for it elsewhere, then yeah. I don't know. What are your guys' thoughts on that?
James, where are you
Nessie?
at?
I would. So like art, like if if I'm going to go to a museum and put something up on a wall, probably skip it on that. But entertainment, like my example that I shared today in our Slack was somebody said, this is how you use AI. And it was like, what if Game of Thrones was filmed in a trailer park, and there's a whole video that has all of the characters, like their faces adapted to look like they lived in a trailer park, and like the dragons were alligators with wings, and it was awesome. It was so entertaining. So I think it can be very entertaining, the things that you can generate with AI. So I'm gonna ship it on that level, like, because I could not stop laughing at this video. It was awesome. The song that went with it was great as well. So if you have a chance to Google it, it was very well done. But yeah, from like art, I'm with you. Like it's being based on other things. But I do think that, you're in the legal field. My understanding is that most of the precedent is based on the case of finders versus keepers. I think that's what they're all referring to on that. Yeah,
That's
most
right.
of the case law hinges on that pivotal case.
Well, they point to, it's like, well, we're using open source libraries, and it's like, yeah, but those open source libraries, how do you know that content was stolen? Clearly, if you dig even just scratch the surface a little bit.
But I bought it at a pawn shop.
Yeah, it's got to be legal.
I will say, I did that for one of our staff meetings. I asked GPT to create an image of an IT department in a messy server closet in the theme of Muppets, and it was terrific. So I like flashed that up on our team meeting. So that was a good one.
That's great. Um, I I'm a ship it if you're willing to do the work, because I found that if you have a creative concept in your head and you're trying to mold it using AI, it's a very helpful tool, but requires a lot of like prompt massaging and that kind of thing to fine tune, you know, your vision into it. But I have I've written songs with with AI, and I've dabbled in a little bit of the drawing stuff. I think it might be a great way to get like game assets out there,
Mhm.
um, especially if they're 2D. 3D is not quite
Not
there
there yet.
yet. That
Yeah.
needs some work, but definitely there's some really cool things that can be done. Like if you're looking like for background music, you could generate some really cool stuff. Um, and 2D uh, type of art, I think it would do pretty well. But make sure you're looking for extra limbs and things like that. The sixth finger.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've seen all
On the
kinds
right
of.
hand.
I've seen some weird things come out um, of AI generated. But yeah, I think if you're willing to do the work with the prompting and reprompting in several iterations, I think it's a ship it.
Just say it's an abstract. Isn't that what Picasso did? There was things all over the place, right?
Oh, I might
Uh,
try that.
yeah, it's an abstract. There was one on our Slack this morning that somebody. I was very disappointed because I was like, oh, I'm going to try this, and somebody suggested, what about the Ride of the Valkyries by Wagner and in played by a banjo? And I'm like, okay, that's because it was around that Game of Thrones thing, and I was like, okay, cool, that would be really funny. And then I asked ChatGPT to do it, and it's like, oh, you could do that, yeah. And here's how you would go about doing it. It gave me the notes and stuff. I was like, man, I wanted a file, I wanted a song, spit that out and give it to me. I even told it to try to generate me a MIDI file so I can import it into GarageBand or whatever. And it was like, oh, let me go try to do that. Oh, sorry, couldn't do that. Here's some notes. So yeah, it would be really cool if I could generate stuff like that on a whim.
That's how I found Suno.
Suno, is that what that?
Yeah, Suno is a songwriting
Okay, I'm gonna have to try
AI.
that. I'm gonna have to try that.
Know what James is doing next.
That's
Yeah,
right. My
yeah.
whole afternoon is
It's
shot
his
now.
whole afternoon shot.
Yeah, it's done.
So,
It's done.
all
All right,
right.
so we got one more real quick.
Okay.
Rolling your own foundational models. What do you think in ship it or skip it? Like actually training a foundational model and your own LLM.
Ooh. If you got the skills and the money, ship it.
Yeah.
Most companies don't and can't afford it. But yeah. I mean, there's a lot of value in it, like training it on entire companies, corporate documents, for instance, things like that. Like huge value in that, but not for the faint of heart.
Right.
And as a reminder, ChatGPT, it was like 1,000 people, like millions of dollars QCing this thing and tweaking it and adjusting. Like, yeah, you're not doing that overnight.
Yeah.
I,
Aaron,
I'm a skip it. I think it's cost and resource inhibitive for rolling your own when there's so many models out there that you can start with and just turn on training, right? And it's just, I don't think that's I think that's a non-starter.
Yeah. I think the compute costs alone it depends on who you are. If you're a very large corporation, sure, and it makes sense to do that. Not for just doing it for its own sake. That would be silly because the compute is just ridiculous.
Yeah,
you don't
if I'm going to
realize how much
spend
this
money on
costs.
computing, I'm probably going to do it on Bitcoin mining.
Exactly. You can make much more money elsewhere.
Right.
Yeah. ROI is there.
You're right.
Okay. All right. So are we going into our lightning round?
All right, so starting off the lightning round. So the lightning round is going to be a series of 10 questions that we ask you in a rapid fire fashion. We will alternate in between the asker. And these are very important on how you answer these. We are looking for short answers. No explanations are needed. And some of them do have a right and wrong answer, and you will be judged heavily on your responses. So with all of that build up, James, would you like to start us off this time?
Yeah, so I mean, we really like to do the hard-hitting questions on our lightning round. So Tapas or pasta?
Tapas.
Invisibility or super strength?
Ooh, gotta go invisibility.
Godfather or Star Wars?
Star Wars. And I confess, can I say this? I've never seen Godfather.
You can say that.
I can say
Let me make you an offer you can't refuse.
that. I get all the references, not you.
What's the most boring thing ever?
Excuse me. Baseball.
Ooh, ooh, you're
I'm
getting
gonna
some
get some
hate
hate
mail
for
on
that.
that one.
Man, you live in the city with the oldest baseball team. Man, that's a tough one. I'm not a big fan. I like being at the stadium. Don't
Yeah.
like watching it on TV.
Everything else around it's fun. Just
Yeah.
yeah.
Do you like the word dapper?
Yes, I love it, and I actually use it on a not too infrequent occasion.
We would have also accepted no. Just
Who's your favorite Harry Potter character?
I would go with Hagrid.
Solid answer.
What is your favorite carnival food?
It's got to be the traditional funnel cake.
Amen.
Oh my gosh. Speaking of funnel cake, I was watching The Floor last night, and the guy's category was carnival food, and he did not get funnel cake. Like, how do you say that's your category that you're an expert in, and you don't know funnel cake? I'm like, get out of here. You're gone. You're dead.
Well, some people call it elephant ear.
Well, no, an elephant ear's flat, though.
Yeah, it's made differently, but yeah, it's the same sort of thing.
We would have accepted elephant ear as a close approximation, but he was way off. Anyways, I digress.
Have you guys seen this trend of speaking of like blasphemy, pancakes where you don't like pour them out to make them flat, you like just kind of drip them on there and you just like make them like scrambled eggs? Have you seen that?
No.
What?
So you take the batter and you like put it on the griddle and you just like scramble it around like scrambled eggs and put it on the plate. You don't make it like a round cake. I don't know. I saw a video the other day and I'm like, I'm going to try it, but I'm not going to like it. I'm not going to like that I tried it because I feel like it was just on principle.
I think that would hurt my brain.
Yeah, it's weird. They say it's good.
Okay. My 13-year-old wants me to buy bacon and pancake mix so we can do deep fried pancake bacon together.
Ooh.
That is.
So that
sounds amazing. Everything's better with bacon.
Yeah.
And fried.
Absolutely.
What's your favorite clothing brand?
I'm an engineer. I don't have a favorite clothing brand. Kohl's? No. I got nothing.
Okay.
Oh, no, wait. Jeans. What's that?
Levi's or something like that?
Levi's. We'll go with Levi's. Why not?
All right, that's fair. What was your last Halloween costume? And that's not necessarily last year, but the last time you wore a Halloween costume. What was that?
I was the no. Hold on. I was the rabbit, the white rabbit.
Excellent. One of my favorite stories. I was addicted to the Disney movie as a kid. For a journal, paper or computer?
Computer. Yeah.
I think that
should be paper,
10.
right?
That was 10, right?
Yeah.
I think that was 10. But I think it should be paper, but I feel like I would lose the journal itself, and then I would be,
I'd run out, and then I'd be gone somewhere, and I'm like,
I've been trying to take notes for like my interactions with clients and people that have a notebook, but of course, I left it at work, and I don't have it today. So I'm really feeling a little like out of place, and I hate the fact that now I'm going to have 2 notebooks because I had to start a new one. Now I got to carry 2 notebooks with me until I get all the way through it. It's just it's a whole thing. So I'm with you on the digital.
I can't focus to do it digitally. So the paper is calming. It's more zen for me. So
it's very zen. All right. Are you ready for the outro, AA, Ron?
Thank you to our guest, Matt Coatney, who's been a wonderful source for AA knowledge and in working with that. My beautiful co-host, James Carmen, and our staff that puts all this lovely stuff out on the web for you to listen to. Please subscribe, click the like buttons, do all the funky things that you got to do. And this has been the / where we lean into the future of IT.